Hello, Drew. I've heard great things about what you've been doing,
Thank
and
you.
you're welcome. I'd like to know some more about how permaculture has enhanced your lifestyle and how it has honed your work.
I was growing veggies and raising chooks and all that sort of stuff as a teenager. So in one sense, I've been doing it all my life, but I've only discovered the movement and all the theory and all the fantastic ideas behind it relatively recently. And before that, I was working in the corporate and investment world, which is very, very different. We had a small property near St Andrews and we lost that on Black Saturday. We were there and it was a very traumatic experience, and that sort of precipitated a complete life change. And that's how I wound up in permaculture. With my wife, Angie, who works with me, we were invited to build a garden at Templestowe College. And that sort of morphed into a very different form of permaculture training at Templestowe College. It's certainly not content oriented in terms of traditional knowledge. I mean, we don't stand in front of a bunch of kids and teach them about permaculture. You know, this is the way the water cycle works and this is the way the carbon. No, we don't do that. We're picking up on the educational philosophy of the school and we're employing permaculture as a way to engage kids in nature, in a way to empower kids to do stuff for themselves. And I think where permaculture can be, for want of a better word, quite a subversive movement, is that it teaches kids that you can make a life for yourself without money, without a loan, and without a piece of paper to say you're licensed to do something. We focus much more on the social development of young people than we do on education about sustainability. We see education for sustainability as much about developing young individuals as it is about teaching them how to install solar panels and grow vegetables. The growing of the vegetables, the building of the chook sheds and stuff, which is the more attractive aspect of it to particularly the young boys, that's a means to an end. Whatever learning they get from that is really valuable for them, but that's not the primary thing we're trying to do.
Fantastic. Thank you. When a child or an adult is able to see a really well functioning permaculture garden and not have the theory thrown at them, I'm wondering how much of it can they absorb by just being in there. And I know that if I go into a really beautiful building, I get to see all the things that are working, probably not, deep down inside, but I get to see natural lighting and I get to feel the comfort of the materials. And I really enjoy that space. And do you feel that the space that you've been able to create at Templestowe has been enhanced by permaculture design?
Yeah, absolutely. If you went to see the school, it was designed in the 70s as a tech school for about 1,400, 1,500 students. To be quite frank, it's not far removed from a prison in terms of design. It's all rectilinear, it's hard surfaces, it's brown brick. So our design process has been as much about changing the aesthetic of the school as it has been about employing permaculture principles. So what you're doing is you're leaving the skeleton of this sort of industrial era educational institution there, and then you're greening the outside of it. And that sends a powerful message to kids because they're involved in that process. They're doing it. They're doing the planting. They're doing the landscaping. That leaves a powerful message that you can change the system. You can change the system to what you want it to be. So we're very careful to leave that skeleton there. Because it was an old tech school, they actually just archived an enormous amount of junk. So when I first arrived there, it had just roomfuls of old stuff, scrap metal and car parts and cookware and all sorts of stuff that we can repurpose. So this is the way you can build a garden. This is the way you can build a new space to be in using the junk of the industrial age. So we built a pizza oven there and we want to make that into a little commercial thing. We had to get some pipes and some wires from a bench up to the roof to run a hot water service. So we thought, what are we going to use? And one of the kids found an old automatic transmission from a car. And then I said, well, can you use that? And they put the thing there and they moved it around. And then they said, well, we strip the guts out of it and take the oil pan off the bottom. We can put it there with a bit of water pipe to lead all the pipes up to the roof. And then where the oil pan was, we can mount an iPad. So it's this sort of critical and imaginative thinking that is so important, not only in the actual outcome, but in what it does to the developing mind.
So I hear frequently from the elders that a key part of social development is through listening. What structures or what spaces could we use to bring people together for effective listening? That's where the schools might have more safe spaces.
That safe space is really important. It's also important that it's completely unstructured. Those kids have a way of exploring in their own space without feeling constrained and under any sort of coercive force to do something. One of the things we did at Templestowe that I'm really surprised worked out so well was that the principal said they wanted to create a sort of natural meeting space. So an arborist came and there was a tree on the grounds that was condemned. So the arborist took it down and I asked them to chop it into specific lengths. And we just built this little native garden with some sort of informal meeting places. I did not make any communication to the school community about it. And within a couple of days, it was packed with kids.
Wow.
They loved it. And to me, it just said, if you can put something that's more inviting, kids will flock to it. And it has become for a group of kids, it's their space.
So what does that space look like?
Oh, it's got a circle of logs that we've just dug into the ground and are sticking out about 600 mil. And the kids can sort of step from one to the other around the circle. And then it's got, in the middle of that circle, it's got a big log with the sort of shallow round on it and the flat top. You know, I've seen kids lying on it and then other kids sort of operating on them and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's a space that they can use that can fire their imagination, where they can be active. One of the amazing things I find about school is that there's not a primary school in the country that doesn't have a playground, and there's very few high schools that do. So if something happens to a kid between 12 and 13, the education system thinks that means they don't play, and it's wrong. So if you create a space that they can play in, but it's not a playground, they'll really respond to that.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for all of your time today.
Thanks very much, April.